All right, we have lots of stuff to cover tonight, but we're going to begin with our guest speaker. And our guest speaker, we're going to begin even before that with Exodus chapter 18 and a little story there. This is the story of Moses, and he's sitting to judge the people. And he's there mourning tonight. You know the story? And when Moses' father-in-law saw all he did for the people, he said, "What is this thing that you're doing for the people? Why do you sit alone and all the people stand before you from morning until evening?" And Moses kind of explains himself. And he says, I'm judging between one another, and I make known the statutes of God and his laws. And so Moses' father-in-law, whose name is, for 10 points, not you. For 10 points, and not you either.
Sorry.
Somebody else who's not like reading the Bible all the time. Well, that would be anybody in here, right? You all do. Who's Moses' father-in-law? I'm going to give a mug to the first person who can come up with it. I'm going to go get it. While y'all are thinking. Okay, Moses' father-in-law for this lovely mug. His name is Jethro. Yay! Very good. Did you look that up on your phone? Really, really good. Excellent. Okay. So Moses' father-in-law says, "The thing that you do is not good. Both you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out. It's too much for you. Listen now to my voice, I'll give you counsel. So you teach them the statute and the laws, and you show them the way in which they must walk and the work they must do." And then he gives Moses some guidance. And the guidance he gives is also given to us about how we choose candidates. He says, "Moreover, you shall select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness." Those are our guidelines. That's the kind of people we're looking for, ideally. That's a tall standard, isn't it? It is a very tall standard. So, we seek to find people with those characteristics. And I say that because we're going to keep looking for good people, and we've gotten some good people into office. And all of this is a warm-up to introduce someone that we're very excited about. And that is our Representative-elect for House District 15. Please welcome Mark Keough.
That is a tall order. Let me say. That's amazing. Jason, we have a PowerPoint for you here today because I want to talk to you about the issue of immigration. We've been talking about a lot of stuff about immigration. Are you about tired of hearing about it?
No.
Good, because we're going to hear about it tonight. Because I had the wonderful opportunity when I went recently to the Republican caucus to speak or to listen to Representative Bonin, who came up with a fabulous PowerPoint that had to do with this issue of immigration, what exactly was going on. And he gave us the opportunity to use this PowerPoint. He said, please feel free to use it, do whatever. We've added some things to it. We've taken some things away that were a little bit difficult to understand, unless you had a lot of time to think through them. And then what we ended up doing was taking some pictures of what we had down when we had the opportunity to go down to the border, in which I had the opportunity to do that a few weeks ago. So we're just going to go ahead and move forward. First of all, when you think about federal responsibility, as outlined in the federal law and the U.S. Constitution, the government has direct jurisdiction over illegal immigration and border security. In Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 of the U.S. Constitution, it empowers Congress. Okay, the Constitution of the United States empowers Congress to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. Now, there's also the Supremacy Clause in Article 6, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution, which also empowers, which not only empowers Congress, but gives Congress the power to preempt state law. That's a big deal. Okay, and this is basically, I think, much of what we're dealing with. Now, when we think about this, modern immigration laws were influenced by some acts. The first one was the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, which created the Immigration and Nationalization Service. You know this as, everybody say it, INS. That's what used to be the control over this whole issue of immigration as of 1952, and defined alien as a person lacking citizenship or status as a national of the U.S. Now, under a Republican president, President Reagan, the need to curtail illegal immigration prompted Congress to enact the Immigration Reform and Control Act, IRCA, in 1986. Now, this law toughened criminal sanctions for employers who hired illegal aliens, denied illegal aliens federally funded services, welfare benefits, but it legitimized some aliens, if you will, through an amnesty program. We know today that there were about 3 million of these individuals who were given amnesty as a result of President Reagan's rules and regulations he put in place while he was there, that he did not veto, but could have. Even though people will say, well, you know, he was kind of put together by a Republican, or by the Democrat Senate and the Democrat Congress. But remember, he's got veto power and he didn't do it. The Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996 reformed the process of alien entry, and it changed the verbiage. Think about this. They eliminated the term entry and they changed it to the word admission. I mean, it's almost mind-boggling, and that was under Clinton. So you have a Republican, now you have a Democrat. On March 1st, 2003, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security opened, replacing the INS. And what they did was, within the department, 3 different agencies were created. So a couple of things happened here. We just decided that we were going to manage the problem rather than eliminate it, number one. And the second thing, in my judgment, and the second thing that we decided to do was to allow continued greater growth of government. So there were 3 agencies: U.S. Customs and Border Enforcement, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement that you hear most about, ICE, I-C-E. Now if you go to our next slide, here is some Texas steps and the fiscal impact that has taken place. Because of the lack of federal involvement, as you know, the DPS and the state of Texas said, look, we have got to do something. So here are things that they've done, because I think that there are people that actually believe that, hey, we're really not accomplishing anything, nothing is really happening. Now you'd be pleased to know I had the opportunity to go and sit with Steve McCraw, who's the head of the DPS, from here to there, and talk with him on an airplane, then spend time with him on the same boat that he was on, and just spend a lot of time talking to him about what's going on. Now, on April 7th, this year, the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Rural Affairs, and Homeland Security met to discuss the state's effort to secure the border, including the state's increased investment in border security. This happened during the 83rd legislative session. This also was addressing the issue of unaccompanied children, which we won't get into right at this point. On June 16th, see this right here? First, Greg Abbott wrote a letter. We read the letter, we duplicated some of the things in the letter, and I wrote a letter to Governor Perry. We put it on Facebook, and then it went out, and it almost kind of went a little bit viral, which was, we come to find out. It was actually very exciting, and it was requesting that there be an additional session. A number of people did that. It was very, very interesting to see the response. I faked a little bit of heat from some people for doing it. You're not ready to do that. And the fact of the matter is, this is my state, and this is my money, And whether I'm a representative-elect, or whether I'm a citizen like all of you, we all have the freedom to write a letter, correct? I get letters from citizens. And so I just felt like I needed to do something, and we did it. And you know what? It went around, and on Facebook and whatnot, some of the responses of other legislators. Long story short, I am confident that there was lots of other things going on at the time, and I am in no way saying that this letter had the kind of impact that caused Governor Perry to do anything. However, we'll never really know, will we? Which is pretty exciting. Anyway, on June 18th, Governor Perry, Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, and Speaker Strauss authorized DPS to fund border security operations at approximately $1.3 million per week, or $5.2 million per month. So the DPS surge operations, then they decided we're going to continue at least through the end of the calendar year. Now the previous DPS border surge operations had resulted in dramatic decreases in crime rates related to drugs, cartels, transnational gangs. What Steve told me was that wherever they move, wherever DPS moves, activity pretty much stops in that area, but it goes somewhere else. And that the issue with the children coming across the border is a very small distraction to the real issues that are taking place, which are drug trafficking and human trafficking as a result of cartel activity. Now we know this. So when DPS gets real serious about it and they go to a particular place, that cartel activity almost ceases, but it picks up somewhere else. He also told us, which I think is an interesting aside, he said that there's not a city in our country where there is not cartel activity. There is cartel activity with actual gangs within the city, and the biggest movement right now is gangs connected to the cartel in the prisons themselves, across the country. On July 2nd, Speaker Strauss appointed members to a select committee on the fiscal impacts of Texas border support operations to examine the short and long-term budgetary effects of what was going to take place with this. And then on the 21st, Governor Perry announced plans to further beef up our state's presence at the border by deploying 1,000 National Guard troops. Now, what is interesting about that is while we were there, at that time, a couple of weeks before this, they had 3,000 troops. Not troops, 3,000 DPS agents. And they were working through the helicopters, they were working in conjunction with Border Patrol, flying over the Rio Grande River, working on the boats, patrolling on a regular basis. And he had requested the funding, or was wanting to request the funding for 1,000 more men, and which I thought was very interesting. He said, or we can do this with 600 men if you will let us work a 9-hour and 40-minute day instead of cutting off our overtime. He said, we can decrease it by 400 people. Here's the problem, he said. If you take and try and put in place 1,000 DPS, he said it'll take 6 years. Just trying to get them into place. Governor Perry, thank God, Governor Perry responded to this whole issue. And Steve's request for 1,000, that's where that really came from. It came from Steve, and it came from 1,000 of the National Guard troops, which, by the way, is a cost monthly of $12 million. Now, these troops are going to support DPS's ongoing law enforcement surge, which we call Operation Strong Safety. That's what's going on right now, Operation Strong Safety. And it's focused upon combating this illegal activity coming across the border, and by the way, illegal activity going south over the border. We have movement now both ways. Last week I had the opportunity to go to a transportation hearing, and I sat and listened. Did you all know that in the state of Texas that a railroad is treated the same as a road? Did you know that? Yeah, the railroad is a road. And so it falls under Department of Public Safety and DOT funding, if you will. Now, what we saw while I was there, what I thought was fascinating, because now we have this fracking sand that is not just coming here to Texas, But it is also going to be going across into Mexico as these companies are trying to work with Mexico to help them with their oil-related activities and all the equipment going across. Here's the problem. The railways are stopped because of the bridges at the borders. And what is even more interesting is that the bridges at the borders, we saw pictures of this, at the south side of the border going into Mexico, the ones on the Mexico side have brick and mortar and steel. On our side, they're gone. Why? Because they were made of wood. They've been burned out, they've been torn down, whatever. All those things, in order to be able to continue with this activity and American companies being able to work there, they were presenting. How this is all going to turn out, I'm not sure, but I listened to the presentation and about how to get this equipment across, and that's what's going to have to take place. But all that essentially has been taken out, but it's fixing to come back up. Now the question is it going to make things better? Well, we know that we have got guns and a variety of things going from our country into Mexico. We've got drug trafficking coming in, we have human trafficking coming in, and we've got the opposite activity going to the south in guns and ammunition and the rest. It's a huge problem. On August 2nd, Governor Perry tapped $38 million of unused DPS funds to pay for the Guard in early stages. And in this deployment to help fund the DPS border search. And the intention is to get back from the federal government because it's ultimately their responsibility. How many of you believe we're going to be able to get those funds back from the federal government? Raise your hand. Brandon, do you have any news on that? Our newest elected senator? No, man, it's tough. But you know what? We're ponying up the money. We're putting the money up to do this, to be able to protect us. So you can see there have been some significant steps. Now, since 2005, just let me go quickly over a couple of things that have taken place. And I've put these in red here. These are the things that are the most significant that have taken place, and the rest are in a group from 2010, 2011, and 2012-13, kind of all together. But in 2005, Operation Linebacker, $9.8 million in federal grants to 16 border area sheriff departments for personal equipment and overtime. 2006, Operation Rio Grande. The security plan by the state border shifted DPS resources to the border and coordinated several surge operations. Operation Wrangler, a Rawlings in 2007, statewide surge operation that featured 6,800 law enforcement personnel and 604 Texas National Guard members. 2008, Operation Border Star is another highlight. First funded with $110.3 million in state funds in 2007. Created joint intelligence centers, created a framework for border security and strategy, and the funds went largely into the Department of Public Safety, which continues today. Now here's what that looks like. When I went down there to the border, Steve McCraw took us, and the team was with us, and it was myself, another representative, and three senator-elects. So it was 5 of us, plus his people and Steve McCraw. And he took us into this control center where there was both Border Patrol and DPS. And in that room, they had a big screen up right over here, they had another screen over here, and there was, I think, a few more around somewhere. But they had real-time pictures of helicopters flying over the border. And you could stand there and watch as the pictures were set back to this group, where they could sit right there and watch what was going on and decide a strategy, or see things they didn't see, or pick up information that the helicopter saw. It was absolutely, I gotta tell you, it was amazing. And this is part of that. And then in 2010 to 11, the state spent $94 million on border security efforts, including boots on the ground, Rangers, Texas Task Force 2, narcotics enforcement, aircraft operations. By the way, Texas Rangers, how many of you here know how many Texas Rangers there are in the state of Texas?
140.
Sweetie, you're not supposed to tell me that. 140 is close, it's 150. You know what's really interesting about that? Because I asked them, I said, well, how come there are not more? He said, we have no limit on the amount. The Texas Rangers are gentlemen who have done something absolutely unbelievable. I don't know, jumped out of an airplane, saved 15 people on the way down, and then somehow managed to pull it all out when the raft opened up and they floated down the river. I don't know. But just unbelievable things. These guys are really, really something else. Do you know what else? And may I have another aside here? As I talked to those guys, I was so impressed. I was so impressed with Steve McCraw. You know, leadership is everything. It pays the chiefs, it pays the Indians, right? And he told us, as we met with him in this room, and there was a square table like this. They fed us some box lunches. This is after we got there, in Westlake. And then they had a number of gentlemen in the brown uniforms, and then they had one Texas Ranger there with his white hat and his white shirt and his tan slacks and his badge. And I mean, this guy, look, he was impressive as could be. The whole thing was incredible. But you know, the thing that stood out in my mind was what he had said. He said, we train our people when they stop somebody on the road, when they pick somebody up, whatever, to be polite, to be dignified, because when you're stopping somebody, even he said, this is interesting, when they get a little bit horsey, even when they do, we still represent Texas. And we want them to see that we are different than everybody else. I was so impressed. I wrote him a letter. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And when I went down there and I talked with these guys, they were so respectful. They were patient. They knew that you didn't have a clue what was going on. And they helped you with the equipment that we were wearing. I mean, it was awesome. These guys at DPS. And what else he told us is this. He said, you know, apparently because of the protocol of the way that the Border Patrol works, the cartel and the coyotes and the rest, the coyotes are the ones who are escorting people across the border at the behest of the cartel, who are paying the coyotes. And he said, you know, the coyotes and cartel have very little respect for border control because of their protocol. They throw a stone at them, they shoot at them, they take off, they do nothing. He said, here in the state of Texas, Steve McCraw told us, we do not have that same protocol. He said, if you shoot at us, we shoot back. It's that easy. And so they have their boats with these 7.68 machine guns, fully automatic. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry. 7.68 fully automatic machine guns that they don't even have a clip on or a switch on where you can turn to single shot. These are real live, high-powered military kind of deals. And I'll show you at the end some pictures of what I was able to pick up. But it was amazing about what respect they have. When DPS is on the water, man, they're heading another direction. I thought that was awesome, especially since I was on one of those boats. 2007-2013, Operation Stone Garden, which was a federal grant for training equipment personnel, provided Texas with $99 million. 2013, Operation Strong Safety. We know what's been going on there. And now, 2014-15, the state allocated $108,943,000 for border security efforts. And then $1.3 million for law enforcement surge that is taking place even now. So some people believe, well, you know, why, we're going to discuss a little why is this as tough as it is? But are we not doing anything? No, we're doing a lot. Problem is, we're a little bit short-handed, and we need federal involvement, of which it's basically lip service to us. Governor Perry's decision to deploy 1,000 National Guard carries a price tag, as I mentioned, of $12 million per month. Now, I want to show you a slide that has to do with apprehensions that have taken place. From June 22nd. Now, what you want to see here is, as it gets smaller in terms of apprehensions, according to Representative Bonnet, who presented this, I thought this was really good. Because I first looked at it and I thought, you know, does that mean they're not working as hard, or it's not working, so there's not as many apprehensions? No, because they're moving in different directions. There's less people coming across. Since we really got serious, in June 22nd and 28th, we had 6,800 apprehensions that week. And the last count taken from Jason, the Department of Public Safety website, August 2010-2016, 2,550. So you can see that there's a decrease in activity if we will keep up the surge. Also, as you think about the unaccompanied kids, go ahead and go to the next screen. The UAC stands for Unaccompanied Children Apprehensions, 13 verses 14. In Big Bend this year, you've got, there was not a 90% increase, 73% increase in Del Rio, and El Centro, 51% increase in El Paso, 38. Not much of an increase in Laredo, but look into Rio Grande, 175% increase. It's unbelievable. In this involvement of this activity, there is the Texas district attorneys are saying that the cartels are using these children as a distraction to create a bigger opening for drug smuggling. And that is exactly what DPS is saying. There's more drug smuggling going on because what happens if we're putting all of our efforts towards these kids, then what's going to take place? We're taking away people who could be stopping the activities from moving in. So this uptick in activity, you'll be pleased to know, and I say that tongue-in-cheek, has helped to make US 59 in Texas one of the top 3 drug corridors for our country as a result of this. Now, in recent weeks, troopers have noticed that vehicles smuggling drugs, other vehicles loaded with illegal immigrants, they have a strategy that's based upon the assumption that the officers are looking for crowds of people and wanting to stop the vehicles loaded with people. But the greatest challenge is that once an illegal alien is apprehended, welcome to the United States. I want you to visualize this. A child gets across the border, junior high, 10, 11, 8, 12, may have paperwork, may not. But let's say they come across with a birth certificate, some documentation. They get off, they look, there's a DPS officer, there's a public official. Here it is. Here's my papers. I surrender. And then they surrender. And guess what happens? We give them a physical examination, we feed them, and we take them to a place where we can educate them, and now they have a great place to stay. I had the opportunity with Jason, with Brandon, with Kevin, Brady, and some others. Sheriff's office was there, Conroe Sheriff's office. Also there was some with a few DPS. But we went to the location. It was up, what was the name of the road, Jason? Lead Line Road. We went there. And we got in there and we went through it. And one of the things that I said to one of the other legislators who was with us is I said, maybe I guess it was Will. I said, Will, man, I wish I could send my kids here to camp. I mean, it's nice and it's expensive. And who knows really what's going on there? I mean, and I'm not, that's all I'm gonna say. Who knows what's really going on? They told us that these kids are brought there, they're taken care of, they periodically are taken, they try and hook them up with families, whatever the case may be. Here's the point. There is not a person in this room that is gonna not feed a child. There is not a person in this room who is not gonna give medical treatment to a child or to a pregnant mother. That's American exceptionalism. That's what we do. So we ask ourselves, well, you know, would I kick him out or would I let him stay? That's not the question. The question that needs to be asked and answered is, what are they doing here to begin with? Well, of course we're going to take care of them. We're not going to turn somebody away that's ready to have a baby, or that is sick, or that is hungry. That's not who we are as a country. That's not who we are as Christians. But I will tell you this. The issue is bigger than that. That's not the right question. It's what in the world are they doing here to begin with? We shouldn't even be having the problem. And as you've heard, I'm sure, before, and this comes from the Texas Public Policy Foundation last year, many of the babies, many of the babies in Texas were born to illegals coming from across the border. And did you know that 58% of every baby that was born in Texas last year, 58%, was born on Medicaid? I don't know how y'all feel about that, but you know, that's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. It's going to kill us. And it is killing us. And we love kids. And we want all the babies to be born. And we love American citizens. But that's not the point. What in the world are they doing here to begin with? According to U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, for fiscal year 2014, a total of 46,307 unaccompanied children have been apprehended in the Rio Grande sector. Comparatively, a total of 16,820 unaccompanied children were apprehended in the same period for 2013, resulting in a 175% change in apprehensions as of July 31st. But now the focus has been on children, often to the exclusion of another group, which is the family units. And the family units, it's not been reported that the number of family unit apprehensions has increased nearly eightfold. Because once they get here, then they try and hook them up with their family. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol data shows that in fiscal year 2014, 57,311 family unit apprehensions were made along the Texas-Mexico border, compared to 7,200 for 2013. 7,200 to 57,000. It's remarkable what's taking place. On August 2nd, Agent Javier Vega Jr. was killed by 2 illegal immigrants. One suspect was arrested no fewer than 4 times for entering the U.S. illegally. One of the murderers. So here is something that's interesting, and according to federal court records, the other had been deported twice. Now we know that not everybody has got this dangerous intent, but just look at some of these statistics, and this graphic will show it. Homicides and alien arrests 2014 is why they're arrested. Homicides 370, sexual assault 7,964, kidnapping 311, armed robbery 7,300, larceny 12,730, burglary 3,819, DWI 11,970, a second DWI more than 790, assaults 17,398, obstructing and resisting 13,565, and drug trafficking and felony possession 23,970 arrests and convictions on this stuff. So you know what that comes out to? Look at this. Total crimes committed, 100,000. 100,000 crimes committed, 100,199. And this is for all alien arrests so far in 2014. 48,762 people account for this. Because as you know, if you're speeding, you get a ticket for speeding. And then you get another arrest, you ran the red light. And then when they do catch you, oops, you've been drinking too much. So you got 3 issues on one person. That's how that's working. Is that right, JD? That's what we're talking about, right? Our attorney here from Montgomery County, we appreciate you being here. Our county jail facilities incur collective costs of over $6 million per month. Through the Federal State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, Federal State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, counties are reimbursed a percentage of costs incurred for housing illegal criminals. But during the fiscal year 2013, counties shared $6.8 million for partial reimbursements for their costs incurred while incarcerating criminal aliens, despite the actual total cost of these counties being roughly $81.6 million. They gave us $6.8 million. What did it cost us? So it cost us, what, $75 million to do this. President Obama's proposed 2014 budget would eliminate the reimbursement program so that counties and states, effectively you and I as taxpayers, would be forced to foot the bill. And this is the job of the federal government. In Texas prison system, the number of offenders the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE, determines to be in country illegally is presently at 6,153. These offenders are a cost at $50.40 per inmate per day to taxpayers, amounting to $18,396 per inmate per year. 2013 ICE data shows 6,000 offenders in Texas Department of Criminal Justice custody were in the U.S. illegally. 2013, Texas received approximately $10.3 million through this federal reimbursement program despite paying out, are you ready for this? $110 million. So it cost us $100 million. This next slide shows where they're going. If you look at Texas, unaccompanied minors are being placed once they found a sponsor. And here, Texas is getting the lion's share, 5,280. You see that over on the right side? You've got New York at 4244, and you've got California at 3909. Now, we know that there's more activity going on in California, so why would there be less in California than there is in Texas? Who can answer that question? I don't care about it in California. It's just ongoing, it's not, it's a problem, but it's not like it is here, and it's getting worse here. But we're doing something about it. Impact of public to education. Immigrant children now residing in Texas, it's unknown. We can't give you a number. Federal data between January 1st, July 31st shows 5,280 children. Can't be, pardon me? New additions, that's right. Civil Rights Act of 1964, here it is, 1982. Plyer versus Doe Supreme Court ruling determined that a state may not deny access to a basic public education to any child residing in the state, whether present in the U.S. legally or otherwise. So if they get across the board, we are federally mandated to educate them. And of course, we do all the rest. Estimated cost to Texas taxpayers, $9,473 per year per child, just over $5 million for the 5,280 children, if that's all there is. So where does this leave Texas? A couple things. First, Texas lawmakers are continuing to demand that the federal government take up their ultimate responsibility in addressing border security. You know, that's what's going on. How that's going to go, we're not sure. I do know that we've got additional help in the Senate, as well as we have more conservatives coming in the House, plus what we're seeing across the board from the top down with the changes in the activities that are going on. So you've got with Greg Abbott, we got with Dan Patrick, and then you've got Ken Paxton, who's coming in as our Attorney General, and our Comptroller. I mean, it just goes right on down the line of all these changes that are taking place, or that should be taking place. If we don't do it this round, do something to curtail what's taking place. Brandon, do you have any comments on that? I mean, seriously, this is a problem.
Yeah,
This is our senator from this district right here. And we just had an opportunity, because he's worked on this, he's worked on these border issues, and we just had the opportunity to go this last week and to see it inaugurated by our governor, who, by the way, the governor was magnificent. And Brandon, you were equally or more magnificent. And we were there, we saw it, it was absolutely awesome. But do you have any comments to make about what we've done and where we're wanting to go?
I think in a few minutes I may come up for a minute or two, and so Julie.
That would be great.
If you're gonna talk about border security, you got more than a minute.
Okay. That's great.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, I went to Kevin Grady's
Yeah,
open town
yeah,
hall.
we heard some of it.
And he had some great legislation, and I mean, he rolled right off the tongue. It was just marvelous. And then one gentleman raised his hand and he said, well, if we don't get, in the Senate, if we don't get enough Senate seats to override a veto, what happens to this? He said, well, and he said, nothing. Nothing's gonna change. We're gonna continue all of what we have. And then someone else raised their hand and they said, well, in 2016, if we don't get the presidential thing, what happens then? Well, nothing. So that's 4 years. I mean, if we don't get over, not just winning the Senate, but, you know, an override to stop the veto power, we're gone. We're dead. I mean, this state, with the, we saw the movie, I saw the movie on Sunday.
Utopia?
We're dead. We've had it. I mean, there's just.
Walter, I couldn't, there was a lady passed away and I had to go.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, there's nothing that Texas can really do. We're just overrun and we are going to be under.
Here's the deal though, we have an opportunity right now to implement some form of change. If we will have the political will, if we will have the backbone to make some hard decisions. And I want to encourage you all, who here is in favor of term limits? Raise your hand. Okay, we're in favor of term limits. You do realize we have term limits now. We all know this. It's called the vote. And our biggest task is getting people out to ensure that there are changes that are going to take place. Because I can tell you this, Battleground, Texas, and Wendy Davis, there's almost not a day that I don't get some type of an email or some type of a text soliciting money and pushing towards the ultimate goal. And the way this is going to change is through the vote. The way we believe we're going to have a lot of conservatives in the state, in the capital this year, is through the vote. And so, assuming that Wendy and company doesn't get everything done that they want to get done, but we have to do something now, because it is a fact. If the state ever turns blue, we're out of business here in the country. It's a brave new world when that happens. But I've been there, down there to the border. The second thing that I wanted to say is, in the absence of federal assistance, continuing to address the immediate border crisis through increased law enforcement presence in the border regions. I will say that our man, Steve McCraw, he's outstanding. He's excellent on this. He's totally committed to it. And before I take off, I wanted to just share a couple things that, as I thought about this, and that I wanted you to see. This is a picture that I got. Some of you will say, why don't we just build a wall? The brown section here in the center, this is privately owned property by U.S. citizens. This is Mexico. This is Mexico. To build a wall, all of the privately owned property across the bottom of the state has to be moved back who knows how many miles, and they need to build a wall across there and figure out a way to buy these people out or get rid of them having ownership of their own property, or let them take their chances on the other side of the wall. Can you see this? I mean, just logistically, nobody had to tell me that. I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this, I'm going, how in the world can you enforce this? It's not like the Rio Grande River is just running straight. Apparently, the Rio Grande River is a fairly young river, because old rivers will have all of this part here turn into a lake through constant flooding, and this part over here, and eventually straight out, and it will go like this. But man, by the time that happens, I hope we all can speak one of 35 foreign languages of different types that are coming across the border. Here's another picture of it. You can see it from the helicopters we were flying over. Continue on, Jason. Here's a wall. Here is a wall that goes across a piece of property right here. Now this is interesting right in this section here, because remember, on these walls, we have property on the other side that is American, that is owned by people, and they've agreed to put walls on these things. In some cases, it's right up against the southern border. But in this case, but they have to have, since that's the case, they have to have a place to go through. And what they found is that people coming across the bottom will go through these places, and DPS will sit right on the other side of that opening right there. They'll just walk through and they'll pick them right up. It's amazing. The walls work. They absolutely deter people from going over. Go ahead, Jason. Picture of yours truly. I didn't do that for me, but I did do it for the airplane. This airplane was one of the planes. It is a Cessna Commander, and it was taken from the cartels, and it was a drug plane that they took, and now they use it for the good guys. How about that, huh? This is Department of Public Safety in West Lakeville, where we had our briefing. This here is one of those TVs I was telling you about. That's going on live right there. This is Steve McCraw standing there talking to us, and that's the river as the helicopter is flying over it. You can walk in there and you can see it going on here and over here. And then you've got DPS along with Border Patrol all in there watching this and discussing things. And there's a couple of DPS guys here. There's the helicopter that we flew in, Texas DPS. You can't see it, this picture of yours truly there. Go ahead, Jason. This here, this is, you can see this. Do we have any other pictures? Do we have any pictures of the apparatus? Here's one of our young men. He's wearing this around his head. It looks terribly hot. It was 100+ degrees down there. But he has it soaked in water, and when the boat is moving, it keeps them cool. That's why they wear it around their head. Also keeps the sun off. And also doesn't let the other guys on the other side see who they are. Because the cartel's on the other side. I said, how do you know which side is Mexico? You get on the border, you have no idea. They say, just go to the side of the boat where the DPS guys are standing by the machine guns. That's the side where the Mexican border is. And so, that's what I did. It was pretty awesome, I gotta tell you. Machine guns, here's one of the boats. You can see it's got 350 Yamaha motors on it. It's 35 foot, fabulous boat. They let me drive it. No joke, I got to drive it, it was exciting. Go ahead. Here, what you see here is this is what we had to wear around us. They were flak jackets is what they were. They were from here down to here, hot, it was unbelievable. But anyway, and these are the machine guns. I think it's, what did you say, 758, 768? I was close, 7562. This is loaded with ammunition here on this side, fully automatic. So it's no wonder the cartel is a little concerned about getting shot back at, because again, here we are as Texans. You shoot at us, guess what? We're going to shoot back. That's why they have such respect for these guys. Whereas the government guys, they just take off. It's hard to believe. So even if we did turn it over to those guys, it ain't happening. It's not gonna happen. That is a cartel house from the water. I had some video, we just didn't have enough, we didn't have enough space to put it on here. But that's one of the cartel homes on the water. Go ahead, Jason. And there's another one. And you just driving a boat right by the cartel, knowing those are the guys, that guy right there who owns that house is in human trafficking, drugs, guns and arms exchange, all kinds of stuff going on. And he is right there, we can see it. Okay, there's nothing we can do. That's right. And just to show you I really did drive it, there I am, driving it. Not that guy, that guy. And it was very exciting, I gotta tell you, it was awesome. I just told him I had a couple of boats over the years and they were pretty big. Love to do it. Questions? Yes?
If it's as bad as you say it is, and I believe it is.
It's getting better. I know it's hard to
don't think
believe.
that It is, from what we hear. How soon do you think it's gonna be before enough people get pissed off enough to go down there themselves and take it into their office?
Some people already are.
Exactly.
And here's what happens when they do that. It messes up DPS. It messes up Border Patrol because they go down there, they're not a part of any group or whatever. Listen, you want to solve this problem? Vote. Get people to vote. We've got to change what's going on in Washington. We've got to finally get somebody who is somewhat conservative in the White House to be able to make change. And, you know, unless there is a Governor Perry or a Ted Cruz that goes in there, some of these guys that have got some ability in that and understanding, it ain't changing. And so, and here's what I mean by it's not changing. We are managing it rather than trying to shut it down. And this is what Stephen Lacrosse says. We're in a management mode. That's why they changed to 3 organizations instead of 1. That's why President Bush did that. Well, let's just manage the situation. Let's change the name. It's not entry anymore, it's admission. What? It's like going to a movie.
Yeah.
Okay?
No, I mean, the situation is that both establishments at the top, including George Bush Jr., met with Vicente Fox in Colorado when he was president, and they want the North American Union, and the whole plan, whether they be Democrat or Republican at the top, the establishment, would like, what they need to do is just gut us. You know, our standard of living has to come down to meld with the other countries. And yeah. And they all feel they're not gonna be a part of it because they're gonna live in their little world together, whether they be Democrat or Republican. They're gonna have their little mansions and they're not gonna go to the same parties, but that's the plan. Unless we know that that's the plan, it doesn't make sense. But both parties at the top, there are people that are internationalists, do not care about the United States, do not care that we're exceptional. They want to gut us.
Yeah, here's the deal.
And that's it.
Amen.
I think probably everybody would agree at some level with what you're saying, no question. And you know, the way I look at it, for me personally, as a legislator that you've elected, my job is to go there and do the best that I can with what I've got to stand in the face of this, to not worry about another term, to do whatever it takes to make sure that this stuff is stopped, no matter what you gotta do. That's what you have assigned me to do. And that's what I'm going to do. And I know that's what our other legislators in this area are doing, that's what our senators are doing. And we've all come to the conclusion, we love the state, we love this place, we love our town, we love the community, we love each other, we love the American way of life. And we're not gonna go down and roll over and just play dead on this deal. We're just not doing it. And I suppose I could probably be screaming and yelling, but everybody's screaming and yelling. You know, how many of you are tired of throwing your shoe at the TV? I just quit, I just watch Netflix instead. The fact of the matter is, people listen. God raises up kings and takes down kings and puts people in positions of authority. The Bible says no man can forward his hand. Do not be afraid. Take heart. Do the right thing. Stand firm. Fight strong. Amen?
Amen.
God bless America, and for sure, God bless Texas.